Gael Monfils is arguably one of the most, if not the most entertaining and interesting players of the sport over the previous 20 years. It seems like his reign has come to an end as well. Not just that, but a bunch of big tennis players have retired this year, including Roger Federer and Serena Williams. Let's talk about why Monfils is retiring and some of the biggest names in the sport who retired this year, starting with updates in the player's life. Many fans think that the 36-year-old French player has conquered less than they expected from him, but that's only because of the big three existing in the same period. Even Gael recalled the players with a smile on his face every single time, speaking tons about how good they were. But that's just one of the traits of the player's long-lasting career. Recently though, for the first time, he and Alina Svitolina, a Ukrainian tennis player, have become parents who first conceived their child on the 15th of October 2022. The player announced this news on his social media accounts with a caption that said he spent one of the best nights of his life with his partner, ending up with the best gift possible, and that he wants to thank his wife and God for this blessed moment. He hasn't played ever since the Masters 1000 in Montreal earlier this year, in which he suffered an injury on his foot. The player had to retire along with Jack Draper in the round of 16. Next up, is Monfils ready to say goodbye to tennis to retire? During his career, the player has repeatedly mentioned that he wants to play until he's 40, but recent rumors claim otherwise, especially since the player was first going to play in the 2023 Australian Open tournament, where he was granted a protected ranking but ended up forfeiting in advance, so we aren't going to see him play there. Gael has for a long time dreamed of being able to play in the Paris Olympics in 2024, but unlike the previous few months, things have changed quite a bit, and the player doesn't necessarily want that anymore. In a recent interview with Canal Plus, he talked about how he's said he wants to play until he's 40 multiple times, but the more time he spends with his daughter makes him believe that isn't what he wants. Lastly, one final goal. 2023 will be a crucial year for the player since he will be transitioning. Not just that, but he has to be extra careful about his injuries and big goals. But the one he's most passionate about is qualifying for the 2024 Olympics. Monfils said that he wouldn't miss the 2024 Olympics under any circumstances, but his last year is professionally playing, maybe 2025 just the year after it. Big players who retired in 2022, coming up at number 5, Joe Wilfried Tsonga. Tsonga, the tour-level titleist that's won over 18 times with a total of 467 wins over matches, has finally bid an emotional goodbye from the sport after his defeat in the first round against Casper Ruud at the French Open. The player announced in his statement that he was going to retire, saying that he announced with a lot of emotion that he was going to stop his professional career at the next French Open. He had a lot of incredible moments playing the sport, along with incredible joy with fans that gave him a lot. The player, who's now 37 years old, left the sport with a total of 121 match wins at the Grand Slam, a staggering record among French male players. The most memorable moment from his career has to be the Olympic doubles silver medal he won with Michael Yodra at the London Games in 2012. He was also the runner-up at 2008's Australian Open once, and even reached the semifinals for the French Open twice, along with the Wimbledon Championships in 2011 and 2012. But we can't forget that he's also won the ATP Masters 1000 twice in 2008 and 2014, and competed in the Nitto ATP Finals 3 times. Not just that, but he also has the second highest winning percentage among Frenchmen in tour-level matches. Moving on to number 4, Juan Martín del Potro. The player left the sport after he lost against Federico Del Bonis in the first round at the Argentina Open, the very same tournament that he got into through a wild card. It was also the first competitive match that the former global number 3 has played since 2019, following 4 surgeries on his right knee. In a conference that took place a few days before the tournament, the player gave a tear-filled announcement. After fighting with several injuries for years, he said that he sadly had to fight against a lot of injuries, but he still managed to accomplish most of the goals he wanted to. Despite that, he's not going to come back to the sport in a miraculous way. It's become increasingly hard for him to play daily, even beyond just sport. The player said that if he's being honest, he needs to share that he knows his skill with the sport, but also that he has limitations. The player first started his professional career in 2005 and first played in an ATP tour even just the next year. He also won his first ATP title in 2008 at Stuttgart and the first out of 4 for that season, though his career's highlight must be his triumph in the 2009 US Open. That same year, he came in 6th in New York and even managed to beat Nadal in the semifinals and Federer in the finals to win the Grand Slam. Next up at number 3, Ashley Barty. Earlier this year, the player left the world shocked when she suddenly announced that she was retiring from the sport. In a recent Instagram interview with Casey Delacqua, her friend and former doubles partner, she told fans that she has decided to walk away from the sport and her reasons for this decision. She started talking about how she was unsure how to do this, but this was a perfect way for her to share with them, her team, and her loved ones, but now she's retiring from the sport. That was the first time she actually said it out loud, and it was much harder than she thought it would be, but ultimately she's ready for it and happy with the decision and knows that for her as a person, it's the right move for now. She announced just weeks after winning at the Australian Open back in January, finally ending the 44-year-long drought for women from Australia at Melbourne Park. But what made this news really a surprise was that the player just got to the peak of her career and looked like she was going to be dominating much more of the game in the future. When she finally retired, she was at the top of WTA's ranking for a total of 114 consecutive weeks, marking the 4th longest streak in the sport's history. Not just that, but she's also won a total of 3 titles in the Grand Slam in 3 different places: the 2019's French Open, the 2021's Wimbledon Championships, and the Australian Open in 2022. All things considered, she managed to get a win-loss record of 305 to 102 in singles and 200 to 64 in doubles, with 15 singles titles and 12 doubles titles won in total. Additionally, at number 2, Serena Williams. She first announced that she was imminently going to retire in an article she wrote for Vogue magazine, in which she carefully talked about the reasons behind the decision, even admitting that her time as a professional is close to an end. The player says that she was never fond of the word retirement and thinks it's a super old way to refer to it. She thinks of it more as a transition, but she still wants to be careful about how she uses that word since it has a very specific meaning to a community. She said that maybe the best way she can describe her next step in life is to call it evolution, and she's here to tell her fans that she's evolving away from the sport and more towards things that she cares more about in her life. It's no doubt that the 23-time Grand Slam champion's achievements and records have been spoken about in depth over her entire career. She's won 7 titles at the Australian Open and Wimbledon, thrice at the French Open, and 6 times at the US Open. But that's not all. In doubles, she's been a champion 6 times at Wimbledon, 4 at the Australian Open, twice at the US Open, and twice again at the Roland Garros. Williams also won the Olympic singles gold at the London Games back in 2012, and the doubles thrice for gold along with her sister Venus Williams. Finally at number 1, Roger Federer. The Swiss legend first announced that he was going to retire a while ago and played the last match of his career at the 2022 Lave Cup. Not just that, but he went onto social media similar to a lot of other retiring players to send the entire tennis world and beyond in shock as he announced his decision to retire. He said that over the past couple of years, as many fans know, he's had to deal with a lot of injuries and surgeries while he's tried his best to get back into his full competitive form. He also knows that his body has certain limits, and recently it's been giving him quite a clear message. The player said in his retirement statement, he went on to add that he's now over 40 and has played over 1,500 matches in a career that went on over 24 years. The sport has been amazing to him, more than he could have ever imagined, but now he needs to realize that it's time to put an end to it. At the Lave Cup in London, the player played in a doubles match with one of his old friends and longtime rivals, Rafael Nadal, though the two lost to Jack Sock and Francis Tiafoe, marking the end of the player's incredible career. The player's achievements, records, and statistics are simply too many to be listed, but generally he's played 1,526 professional games and won 1,251 out of them. He's been the world number 1 for 310 weeks in a row and won over 103 career titles. But that's a wrap for this video, my friends. What are your thoughts about the player's retirement? Let us know in the comments below. Please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.